Folks, and welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm playing a practice round here at the Saw. Of course, it's been featured on this channel plenty of times already, but doing it again because I'm getting ready for the Southside Kickoff tournament coming up. I'm not sure if I'll be able to film the tournament or not. I did want to at least get a practice round video out. And so I'm going to split this up between front nine and back nine, so I'm going to kind of talk through the holes a little bit in more detail. There's not going to be a whole lot of editing. I'm just going to be throwing a lot of practice shots. So I'll probably split this up between a front nine and a back nine just to make the video a little bit more consumable. Without further ado, we're on hole number one. It is just under 300 feet, pretty much dead straight ahead. There is an OB parking lot and road to the right. And really the biggest thing on this hole is just avoiding that OB on the right-hand side, clearing this low ceiling off the front of the tee. And then you have that big wide tree that's in the center of the fairway. Just get to the left or right of it and you'll be able to pitch up for par. If you can get enough distance, then you can potentially have a birdie putt, but it's a little bit of a tricky green, which I'll show you once we get up there. I'm sure if you've already played this course, you're familiar with what I'm talking about. But really, again, it's just about trying to get, some decent progress up the, center of the fairway. I think the best miss is to miss left of the wide tree, and that gives you an easy pitch down for par, or maybe even a chance to run the putt depending on the OB rules for the tournament that you're playing, because there's a row behind the basket where sometimes it's OB and sometimes it's not, so it just kind of depends. But really, I'm probably going to throw like putter or mid off the tee on this hole, and just try to play it safe. I kind of just line myself up on the right-hand side of the tee to open up the gap more and just try to kind of aim for the wide tree and then break off of it left. That's pretty much exactly what I want on that particular shot. Aim towards the tree, faded left. It's a very safe shot, guaranteed par pretty much. That's basically the same exact shot. So just kind of getting some rips in on it. I feel like if you want to get aggressive and score on this hole, you want to go right side of the wide tree and then kind of hyzer into the green, but then that brings that parking lot on the right-hand side into play. So that's where you can lose strokes. In which case, if I'm trying to get aggressive, I'll go on the other side of the tee to open up the right-hand side a little bit more. Try to beam one down there. I caught those trees on the right-hand side, but if I could have been just a little bit left of those trees, it would have pushed forward and maybe skipped up to the green. But again, it brings those trees into play. Also brings that right-hand side OB into play. So really, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to just try to go up the center and fade out left to pitch up for par. But if I just feel like I really need this birdie for some reason, then I will maybe take the risk with the fairway driver up the right-hand side, see if I can get through and get a putt. So this is kind of a common landing zone for me, is what you're looking at right now. The MD3 is right in front of me and the NV is right in front of that, like maybe another 3 or 4 feet. So they're basically in the same spot. And so from here, it's really just kind of a forehand to the green. Just kind of a simple pitch up to get your par. Like I said, there is a road behind the basket, which sometimes places out of bounds, which makes it a little bit trickier, but pretty reasonable stuff. So there's the OB road I was talking about behind the ditch. It's just like a little pathway that kind of rides up towards the pool at the park. Sometimes it plays as OB, sometimes it doesn't. So for example, that disc that's on the other side of the road potentially could be out of bounds. Just depends on the tournament. But you just want to try to get somewhere up in this green, give yourself a birdie putt maybe off the tee if you can get through these trees, or just pitch up and get your par. All right, so this next hole is pretty straightforward. It's about 260 feet. It's slightly uphill. It's to the left. Basket's kind of hard to see because it's in some shade and kind of guarded by some trees. Really, the main gap is throwing through this amphitheater here on the right center of the screen and just having it hyzer in. But there is also a gap at the left-hand side, but it brings that OB left road into play. So really, it's just kind of choose what route you feel most comfortable with, depending on if you're right-handed or backhanded, or if you're backhand or forehand dominant. I just throw a backhand flat to hyzer over the amphitheater, have it try to fade in towards the basket is really my main play. Either a mid or maybe like a slower speed fairway driver, depending on the wind. That's more of the shot I'm looking for. I just need a little more height. kind of working through some form changes from a recent lesson I had, so throwing me a little bit off. That was too wide. Oh well. So my first two shots kind of landed edge of circle one or just outside of circle one. If I got a little bit more height on that second disc, it would have been skipping up there just right. The only other really important thing, I guess, to think about in this hole is that if you are below the basket, you are putting uphill, which gives a little bit of a risk of a rollaway. But other than that, this is one of the more straightforward holes on the course and definitely one you really want to get. All right, so now we're at hole 3, 340 feet, but it plays significantly downhill, so definitely plays less than that. Basket's just kind of dead center of the screen down there to the right of the light pole. And the trick with this is because it's so downhill, it's about making sure that you have a little bit more weight forward and making sure that you're matching the grade of the hill as you throw to try to keep the nose down on the disc. If you stay upright and throw flat as the disc is going downhill, it's probably going to become nose up and then eventually get messed up by the wind, either knocked down by a tailwind or lifted by a headwind. It's also going to stall out and fade left. And there is an OB ditch deep of the basket and kind of to the left of the basket, coming a little bit closer towards the tee pad. That kind of you have to worry about. And it's also just very wind dependent on this hole, honestly, because again, you want to keep the nose down, but depending on the wind, it may cause it to flip a lot and you could get caught up on the right hand side. But honestly, for me, what I do here is very wind dependent. And again, the main focus I have is just trying to like keep the nose down, match the grade of the hill. And if I get there, cool. If I don't, I should at least, you know, have a pretty easy par. You just don't want to mess up and stall out way left and give yourself a really hard approach shot to where you have like no chance to get up and down for par or somehow wind up out of bounds. And if you get caught up on this right-hand side, again, it can be very hard to recover a par from there. So that's all I'm thinking. I matched the grade of the hill really nice there, but just turned it over. A little better, maybe circle 2. Still not quite what I want for a birdie, but still a good, reasonable shot. Try something a touch more stable. That's a decent shot, about pin high. It did kind of stall and go a little bit left on me because I kind of threw it a little too high and got that slight nose up I was talking about. But with it being a headwind that I just threw into, it kind of worked out in the end. So again, this hole is really wind dependent, but main thing is just try to keep it dead straight. Don't really have to go for crazy distance. You just want to par the hole. Try to just keep that nose down, match the grade of the hill. Try not to stall out left. You should be at least getting a 3. So we're at where the St. Pro landed. The first one I threw that I just threw too low and turned it over too much, but I still have like a really easy up shot to grab par, dead center fairway. So again, a decent mistake to at least make sure I don't take any damage on the scorecard. My FD actually was a pretty decent flight. It is actually pin high, but still probably about 40 feet. So definitely it's still a difficult putt to grab birdie, but again, kind of a guaranteed par. And the Dynasty that I threw that went even a little bit further than the FD is not really that different. It's just a little bit more, I guess, forward than the FD, but it's still about the same distance from the basket as far as putting goes. But I also kind of challenged the OB deep a little bit there on the ditch, but all good. Again, this is one of those holes where I'm not too mad if I don't get it. If I give myself a chance at birdie, cool, but as long as I get my 3, I'm pretty satisfied. All right, so now we're at hole 4, just under 400 feet. Initially it plays downhill, but then it comes back up the hill once you get across the ditch. Really the main thing you want to do is just hit this gap dead center of the screen, maybe hang it out a little bit right towards those bushes and then have it hyzer in dead center cut. You just obviously want to miss this sewer cap and the tree right in front of that, play to the right of that. Again, get over the ditch and you can kind of see those 2 trees that are behind that initial tree I was talking about by the sewer cap. They're kind of darker trees in the shadows. If you can land on the front side of those, then you have kind of a pitch up the hill to get yourself a par. This is a hole that I don't expect a lot of people will birdie. Some pros can definitely throw like a perfect shot that gets to circle 2 and gets them a look, but it's pretty congested. So I'm not even thinking about anything but par on this hole. I just want to make sure I get over the ditch off the tee, kind of play a little bit more towards the right-hand side. The miss is definitely to be right. If you're too far left, then you get pinched off from being able to get up the hill towards the basket, which you can't even really see from here. I'll definitely show you that when we get up there. So I usually just throw something kind of like slightly overstable, like an Explorer or my Halo Dynasty or something like that. And basically just try to, again, play a little bit towards that right-hand side and then have it eventually break in. So I'm gonna throw both here. That is perfect. I'm not quite as center as I want to be, but I'm still in the fairway on the right-hand side, and I can still easily approach the basket from there. So that is pretty solid. Again, it'd be ideal to be a little bit more left than that, but I will take that every time. So this is the view you get to the basket if you land center cut. Again, ideally you would land kind of in front of those trees to the left and then be center fairway, and then you can kind of see the basket up there to the right. My discs are a little bit right of center than I want, but it still sets up a pretty reasonable forehand approach shot. Again, the Halo Dynasty was a little short because I kind of yanked it right, but it's still in an okay position. And then my first shot with the Explorer got a little bit further, maybe like 10 or 15 feet further up the fairway, but again, still on that right-hand side, which is a little trickier to deal with. But again, it's way better than if you miss left and wind up in that junk over there. You're wasting a stroke just kind of getting back to the fairway probably, and with really no chance to get par. So definitely want to be as straight as possible to have the best chance at getting an easy par. Again, if you miss a little bit right, not too big of a deal. You might still have some type of approach shot, probably like a righty forehand. All right, and so now we're on hole 5, a shorty but a technical shot just because it's so uphill and there is a tree dead center of the fairway where you would like to fit a disc. It's a blind shot, but you can kind of see that red towel at the top of the screen that is directly above the basket to give you kind of an indication on where it is. I think the best chance to birdie this hole is probably just a straight backhand up the hill that maybe gently turns towards the basket up the left-hand side, or if you can hit the right side of the center tree on something flat and just kind of let it gently fade towards the basket. I think that's also a reasonable play. Me personally, just to make sure that I get up the hill and that I don't hit the first available, usually my best bet is trying some type of flex forehand just to give myself, you know, a pretty easy par. And if I get the perfect forehand flight, then maybe I'm able to get up there and get a birdie. Definitely very gettable if you have a good uphill backhand, but I am not very good at throwing backhands uphill, especially with like there's roots in the tee box, which makes backhands a little bit tricky as well, just to find footing unless you're throwing like a standstill, which again, I think even though it's a short hole, because it plays so uphill and because that tree is so perfectly placed in the center of the fairway, and even if you just happen to yank it right a little bit or miss a little bit early left, it's a pretty thin tunnel. So definitely a lot to think about. But for me, my comfort really has been mostly the flex forehand up the left-hand side and just see what I get at the end of it. The only real downfall is if you go right with a forehand too early, this slopes pretty heavily downhill to the right, which can make it a little tricky. You might get caught up in some bushes or something like that. So that's like really the only like massive risk, but it's definitely there. But like I said, I like to kind of just play the right-hand side of the tee box, open up the most amount of room for like a little bit of a flex forehand. While that was overturned, it's still up the hill and in the open, and I could probably pitch up for a par from there. So like, that's kind of the good thing about this shot. As long as you get the height and distance right, even if you overcook it left, you still are probably gonna be able to get a par. Try a backhand real quick. Yeah, just not enough distance, but again, anything you can get up there gives you something to look at least. See, there's the forehand I threw first that I overturned left, but literally around the other side of this tree, like right through this bush, is the basket. So a pretty easy little chip shot backhand will still get me my par. The backhand I threw is kind of just in that tall shrubbery next to the tree. Again, a very easy pitch up for par from there. All right, and so now we're at hole 6, 440 feet, pretty much dead straight ahead. The basket's slightly to the right once you get up the fairway. Basically, you just want to throw your straightest shot. I mean, that's really all it is. I think this is one of the hardest holes on the course. I doubt it'll get birdied very much. Not only does it take 440 feet of power to get to the basket, but you have to keep it on a laser beam basically the entire way. It's a very skinny fairway. There's 3 huge trees, you know, one blocking left side, one blocking right side, and one blocking dead center. So you really kind of just have to keep something as straight as you can to beat that first tree on the right in front of the red tee. If you're gonna miss, I think missing less a little better. There is actually an OB road right, especially if you have too much height on the disc, you can actually go out of bounds. And if you get caught on the right-hand side, short of the red tee in that bushy area, you're basically wasting a shot just getting back out to the fairway, and you're probably taking a 4. In fact, I mean, I don't see how you wouldn't at that point. It'd be take a miracle throw in or something like that. So really, just try to throw something straight. If you're gonna miss left, but don't miss too far left, because then you're still stuck in some stuff and probably having a hard time scrambling for par. So this is, and again, a hole I'm not even thinking about birdieing. Again, I don't think a lot of people are. Again, it's really just kind of, you know, throw something straight, give yourself a chance. So we'll throw a couple of different discs here. Just trying to throw something straight. That's really all I can say. Also, the footing on this one's a little tough. There's some roots and stuff kind of in the tee area that makes it a little tricky, but it is what it is. Definitely a little bit of an early release left there, but it's still not god awful. Might still be able to scramble from there. That's perfect. Yeah, that's dead center cut. Got past the second tree, I think, even though I kind of caught the shrubbery under the tree. But still should probably be able to get up and down from there for a par. Okay, there's where my first disc landed. As you can see, it's gonna be a pretty tricky approach to the basket. Kind of a tunnel shot, either left or right side of that tree right in front of the disc. Definitely gonna be a toughie, but it's doable. At least getting bogey though, for sure, from there, I would think. But potentially could get a little bit more. That little road that crosses in front of the basket, that does not count as OB. It's just the road right that's out of bounds that that car's turning in from. But the actual smaller road that it's now driving on is not out of bounds. It doesn't play as a river, as OB or anything like that. Just happens to, you know, cut off in front of the fairway a little bit. We'll go look at my other shot. So here's my Dynasty that I threw, and that's about as good as it gets. I mean, sure, you'd love more distance, but as far as placement goes, that is as center cut as it gets, and it's a pretty easy, like 100 to 150 foot up shot. Probably like a little forehand over the road. Stay away from those trees on the right-hand side of the basket. Left side's a little bit more open. You can also do a slight backhand turnover. Again, just gotta stay away from the road to the right. That is OB, but again, the road right in front of you isn't. All right, and so now we are at hole number 7. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a big fan of this hole. It's one of my least favorite holes in the area. Just to me, it's kind of a poke and hope hole. There's not really one super truly defined gap to get through these trees to get to the basket. And then once you get to the basket, there's monkey bars that block you from putting if you're straight on with the basket. So you have to be left or right of the pin a good bit to have an open putt. So it's like a gimmicky tree line and then a gimmicky putting green with the monkey bars. And so to me, it's just too many gimmicks on one hole, kind of a poke and hope. So I will say par is usually very gettable. So you don't really have to worry about that part. It's just birdieing is very difficult because, again, you really have to try to get through there and make sure you're in the perfect spot landing-wise to have a true putt without the monkey bars blocking you. And also the footing, again, is a little bit rough with the roots. So, it is what it is. I usually try to go forehand wide left and then have it skip right if I can. My forehand's been a little off lately. Haven't really fixed that. Y'all probably seen that in recent videos. It's not really improved, although I am trying some things to get it better. Now it's actually pretty good. I flexed it a little too much, but if falling through and skip back to the green, it might be a putt. Also sorry we're right by one of the main roads, so it's pretty loud. Try adjust this now. A little slower, a little more overstable. I didn't turn it over enough. Still a very easy par from there though. Do the pyro. Not a good angle. Still up there for a par though. All right, so my forehand's landed right here, definitely short of the pin and definitely just didn't get over on them enough. But as you can see, the monkey bars block any straight on putt. So that's why you really need the distance and you need to be left or right. So again, it's just kind of gimmick after gimmick on this hole, in my opinion, with the tree line the way that it is. It's no true big gap, and then the monkey bars, I don't know. To me, it's just kind of silly, but it's still a short hole. So again, you're gonna par it probably no matter what you do, as long as you really don't screw up off the tee. So it's not really any harm on your scorecard, but with the distance that it is, you really want to birdie it, because I feel like a lot of the holes here can be tough to birdie, and this is one you really want to get because of the distance, but just can be very tricky to get through and give yourself a good putt. We'll go check on my forehand. I threw first, the Spice, over on the left, and see if I have a putt there. So that's where the Spice landed. It actually did land on the left side, so I do have a putt at the basket. Probably 35 feet, maybe 40. So a chance, but didn't quite get enough forward push and kind of yanked it a little too far left to get it in the ideal C1 position, but not too shabby. All right, so now we're on hole 8. It's a little under 300 feet. It's dead straight ahead, kind of a blind shot. Baskets, again, just dead straight ahead, kind of next to a big tree in the shadows. You're kind of throwing just over the top of the little red tee stake, just to the left of this little bush. Maybe have something with some slight turn that then kind of gently pans out is probably the best play. You can also throw something overstable, like on a flex line over the top of the red tee, like flex it out right and then have it hyzer back in later is another option. I guess you could go wide left, but that's really tricky. But then it kind of does drop off downhill. Once you get maybe 200 feet up the fairway, it starts dropping downhill a pretty decent bit. There is a Mando, because people used to throw like a really wide hyzer out right. But the Mando doesn't truly come into play, really. It just kind of takes away one of the routes people used to take, but if you're going up the normal center, then the Mando should never really be a problem. So yeah, I usually just try to throw something kind of dead straight with some slight turn and hope that it turns enough to not trickle too far downhill left and give myself a putt. It was actually one of the birdies I got in this course last tournament. So maybe we can do it again, we'll see. That's the right distance, but just too much turn. It didn't quite come out. Need to put maybe a touch of hyzer on that, or throw it a little flatter. Maybe I came over the top of it. That's one of the actual biggest issues I've been having with my backhand lately, is I used to like, I'll try to demonstrate. When I would reach back, I would kind of lean backwards. So I've been trying to like be more upright and more balanced and kind of like make sure that I'm not leaning backwards and that I'm more upright for the throw. But I've actually started to overcompensate and actually lean forward, which has caused me to like turf the disc. And I've also been at sometimes trying so hard to stay upright that I wind up just like coming over the disc by being like leaned backwards a little bit. So just a couple things I'm trying to work through on the backhand. That one of the biggest issues is my plant foot, which is if I'm not actually throwing the disc, and I'm just practicing. So if I'm just standing here and I'm like, you know, X step, or you know, your step out from the X step, I can land my foot exactly how it's supposed to be, you know, nice and horizontal to the target, keeping my hip closed off. That way it's there for the actual throw instead of opening early. But as soon as I throw a disc, for whatever reason, it's like I'll plant, but as I'm coming through, I'll already start sliding my foot forward, opening my hip up too early and just losing a lot of power because of it. So I've been trying to focus on like heel first and really trying to stick on the plant, but it's hard to break muscle memory, folks, especially when you've been doing it for like the entire time I've been playing disc golf at this point, which is like almost 3 years. So baby steps. We're gonna try a similar throw with something slightly more stable, see if I can get it to come out at the end. That might be it. that is the line I wanted. It may be a little short. All right, so there's the tee area and the little bush right in the center of the screen. That was the tree that was kind of to the left of the tee. So now I'll just do a complete 180 towards the basket. Now you can see it. You can kind of see this tree from the tee in the background in the shadows. So the first disc I threw was the St. Pro, and I did turn a little bit too much. It is pin high, so I got the distance right, but it turned over too much, never really came back, and so I'm kind of putting through those bushes probably. So that's likely going to be a par. Maybe there's a way I could fit a putt through there, but seems kind of unlikely. Probably just going to go ahead and be a 3, which is okay. But the second shot I threw, the Dynasty, was actually perfect. Got that fade back at the end, and I am in, I don't know, I would say like maybe 25 to 20 feet away for birdie putt. So pretty solid shot. And let's head on to the final hole of this first video. All right, final hole, the front 9, hole 9, 370 to 380 feet, dead straight ahead. After about the first 280 to 300 feet, it does drop off downhill towards the basket. It is a blind shot. Really, the only thing you want to make sure you don't do is yank it into this first tree to the right if you try to overturn something, or you know, just shank it, rip lock, whatever you want to call it. If you're left, you can still sometimes pitch up with like a hyzer backhand, but really you just want to be as center cut as you can be. It's definitely reachable for bigger arms for a birdie, but it still is a tricky green, which I'll show you later, because there's like these down big logs that kind of block the front side of the green, which can make your putt really tricky, or it can just kind of block your shot from getting to the green if you have that kind of distance. I don't really have that distance anyway. If I can just stay center cut and get into that center gap and just have a pitch down for a par, that's usually all I'm looking for. And so honestly, what I tell people, and something that I'm trying to follow on this hole myself, is you don't really need that much distance. You can throw like a mid-range or maybe even a fairway driver, I guess, and just, you know, get yourself a nice 250 to 300 feet, somewhere in that range, and then just have a pretty easy pitch up for par. Unless you really think you can throw it 380 or 370 to get to the pin and keep it accurate all the way there, it's kind of just not necessarily worth it in my opinion. But I'll throw a couple here. I'm going to throw a couple of fairways and then a couple of distance drivers. We got a little bit of a tailwind today, so things are going to be a little bit more stable than normal on this hole, it looks like. So I'm going to throw a Saint, which is pretty beat up and understable first, then a Saint Pro, then I got a couple of Swords to just try to get some distance on it. One other thing I've been working on with the form, by the way, since I was talking about it earlier, is that I'm peaking my plant foot before my reach back, which has been tough. So I'm trying to work on that.
Hell yeah.
That'll work.
That was a shot right there, man.
Thank you.
Glad I got to see it.
All right, so I'm not going to show him on camera because I don't think he wants to be on camera. That's Cecil McGuire. He's one of the guys that kind of runs, I think he might be in charge of the Parks and Recreation Department in Chickasaw, where the disc course, I don't know what his official title is, but he is always helping out at these parks with like landscaping. He designed these courses. Really awesome dude. He rolled up on me when I was trying to tell you something about my backhand form, which was that outside of like the whole plant foot issue that I was telling you about earlier, and maybe being too lean forward or too lean backwards, is that my reach back or coiling of my shoulders is peaking before my foot gets firmly planted, and that timing being off is like causing a negative chain reaction, which ruins the rest of my throw as far as like getting more distance. Because right now I'm still kind of capped at like 330, 340, but I would say my average distance is more like 315 to 320, but 340 is kind of the highest end. Maybe every now and then on like a downhill shot I can, you know, get closer to 400. So yeah, definitely some things I'm working through, but that was a really good shot. I just threw something kind of understable to the left hand side, let it flip, and then kind of pan out. This should do something pretty similar. Yep, similar shot, exactly what I want. And again, that's just fairway drivers. I'm not even really trying to throw it that hard. And that's still probably gonna be like 70-foot approach shots maybe. I'm getting towards that downhill part. All right, so there's where my second shot, the St. Pro, landed. Again, that's what I was talking about with the green, just like these downed logs that are, you know, pretty grown up with greenery. Definitely blocks the front side of the green, so if you're short of the basket, you definitely have an obstructed putt. But that's still such an easy chip shot now for par, which is all I'm really looking for on this hole. And now I'm gonna go look for the first disc I threw. I actually don't know where it is. Maybe it wound up better than that one. I did have a good throw on it. Maybe I got like a good skip and roll. Let's see if we can find it. Where are you, disc? I'm sure you love this. Bouncing up and down. Me singing. Kind of singing. Oh, there it is. They found it. So this one got, I don't know, maybe, it's like a good 30 feet further forward than the other one. This is like maybe a deep circle 2 putt. Here, I'm standing at my lie right now. Yeah, this is probably like a 60 to 70 footer. So kind of outer edge of circle 2 maybe, but still a very easy par at least, so. All right, folks, that's going to do it here for the front 9 at the Saw. If you like the content, please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, help the algorithm. We're well past 1,000 subscribers at this point, which is amazing. So just want to try to keep the channel growing. I do apologize that there hasn't been so much content out lately, but to be honest with you, there's really one big reason for that, and that's weather. We are seeing like record highs down here in the southeast United States pretty much every single day for the last 3 to 4 weeks. It has been over 100 degrees Fahrenheit when it's in like the early afternoon to evening hours. So like maybe 30 Celsius or more if you're on the metric system. And because of the humidity being super, super high here on the Gulf Coast, you know, every day the heat index, or what it feels like outside, is really more like 110 or more Fahrenheit, you know, pushing to 115 Fahrenheit, which is, you know, mid to high 30s Celsius. So it has been miserably hot, which means I haven't really been going out to play. And when I do, it's kind of early in the morning and I'm playing with friends. I don't really feel like filming all the time because they're not always into wanting to do filming, which is totally understandable. And the other big thing is when it's not super hot, it's like thunderstorms like crazy. So it's one or the other. And today, even while I'm recording this, it's well over 100 degrees. I'm sweating my butt off. I am dying, but I wanted to get some videos out there because I haven't put out content in a while. Like I said, I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to film this tournament or not, because usually my fiance films for me, but she's on call the weekend of the tournament, which means she might get called into work. And I don't want to, you know, put any stress on her in case that happens or something like that. So we'll see what happens, but I still wanted to get some content out there. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you tune into the back nine, which will be coming out soon, or it may already be out depending on when you watch this. That's just the way the internet works, man. See you next time.